How do you feel if you see your student holding on to this sign by the end of an online class? Will you be worried? Would you like to do something for them? In the current new normal, are the teachers supposed to save some soul and teach at the same time? To answer these questions today, I am here. My presentation may answer some of your queries, not for saving soul maybe, but at least soothing the soul. This presentation is intended for the 9th OpenTESOL International Conference 2021. My name is Rizwana Islam. I am currently working in the University of Liberal Arts, Bangladesh as a lecturer in the Center for Language Studies. And today my topic will be about measuring the psychological well-being, especially in a digital environment right now, the current online class environment, and what sort of tool we can prepare to measure this psychological well-being. When I was thinking about this psychological well-being, I tried to focus on the current studies. So what is happening currently? As of now, I have been hearing news about students trying to commit suicide, students getting into severe depression, especially the adult learners, the students at the university. So the university students in Bangladesh, if we look at two studies from 2020, we can focus on the fact that there are a certain increase in suicidal thoughts, stress, depression, and this is all because of the pandemic. This is all because of the current situation. This is all this anxiety, this stress is all because of the current reality that they have to face, the students have to face. Then what about the learners around the world? If we focus on the learners around the world, in two studies, I see that students, 50% students at least admit that there is a certain negative effect of frequently using some digital tools for studying or other purposes. There is also the stress due to the lack of direct communication. Now, there is no direct physical communication between students and the teachers and students. So, of course, in an Indonesian study, this point came up where students talked about how they cannot directly communicate with the teachers, and that actually increases their stress. So when I was looking into this stress, depression, suicidal thought, of course, I looked into the current theories in psychology, and I wanted to find something for the students which will help them in the long run. So it's not only about their current mental health. It's not only about making them happy or making them familiar with the current situation. I wanted to make them aware of their future as well. I wanted to have an wholesome idea about what they're going through and what they can do to improve their current situation. When I was focusing on it, I focused on the two theories, which one is hedonism and another one is eudaimonism. Pardon my pronunciation here. So hedonism talked about only the current choice of happiness, where eudaimonism basically goes beyond the theory of happiness and it focuses on the purpose of life. That means it gives us a deeper outlook of life. So I thought that especially for adult learners, they need to focus on the deeper things in life. They need to see themselves, see their future selves. They need to see their current purpose. They need to see their current situation, at the same time evaluate what they can do based on it. So when I was looking into the existing studies, I saw that in a study of Nigerian student, they used the Reeve scale to measure the student's psychological well-being, and it came up as their habit of self-acceptance, their focus on their future. All of these things came up from Reeve's psychological well-being scale. Again, another issue I saw in a study of one Italian university, where by using a certain questionnaire, adult learners' risk of psychological distress due to the lack of direct human contact came forward. So here you can see the tool that we are trying to prepare can be a simple questionnaire, but that would bring out the bigger issues in our mind, the bigger issues in their mind as well, in the student's mind as well. So based on this current reality, I asked myself, to what extent does the current pandemic and surge of online education affect the psychological well-being of undergraduate learners in Bangladesh? As a researcher and as a teacher who is currently teaching undergraduate learners, this question was pretty personal for me. This question was pretty motivating for me. And this was something I really wanted to know. So when I was looking into the current theories, you saw that I was talking about RIFS, psychological well-being scale. So instead of going into RIF psychological well-being scale, I decided to get into the sixth dimension from where the scale came up. So the sixth dimension I found took me to the self-acceptance, positive relation with other people, autonomy, environmental mastery, purpose in life, personal growth. These issues came up one after another, and this gave me some idea about what I want to ask my students. So the first thing I thought about was the self-acceptance. And now in regular time, we will actually explain the self-acceptance things as something written here: possessing positive attitude towards self, acknowledging and accepting multiple aspects of life, or including good and bad qualities. How do I feel about positive? If I feel positive about past life? So that would be a high scorer in self-acceptance. But if I want to transform it or interpret it in the current situation of the pandemic and the online classes and students' mental well-being, how would I explain it? What about the positive relation with people? So having warm, satisfying, trusting relationship in regular time is not the same thing as having warm, satisfying and trusting relationship in the time of a pandemic. So how do I ask my students about that as well? So thinking about this sixth dimension was not enough. I had to connect them with the current pandemic and the online classes. So the research methodology that I followed was interviewing some students, and of course preparing a questionnaire and giving it to the students. The questionnaire was prepared in Google Form. So I shared the Google Form link with students. 80 students participated in the current study. Now they were from 18 to 27 years old. And all of these students have one thing in common: they are private university students. Now, one thing is that most of the students who participated in the studies were female. However, later in this presentation, you will see this factor, how it had impact, what sort of impact it had on my study. So beside using questionnaire, there was semi-structured interview, which I did. So the whole sampling process was definitely random. By using this research methodology, I administered the questionnaire and I got some responses from the student. So the items for the questionnaire, I divided them into two sections to get proper responses. One was profile analysis. I asked some questions related to their profile, like their age, how much time they spend with their family, because some of the students, they live alone, and some of the students, they live with their family. Some of them are married, some of them are not. Although in my study, the number of married students were only 17% or less than that. Their history with COVID-19, if they had COVID-19 before, or someone in their family had COVID-19 before, what sort of access they have to mental health, and who can actually help when they face some sort of mental health problem. I also asked that question. Of course, the students, all of us, we have some sort of safe person in our mind, right? That I can go to that person will be my safety, ultimate safety, if I'm facing any sort of problem or any sort of mental health issue. Again, the second section of the study was connecting RIF's dimension with the pandemic and the online classes. So the dimension I was focusing on took me to focus on the autonomy part, took me to focus on the acceptance part, related to planning their future, related to planning their current situation, they're focusing on their self-growth, and of course their activity during the pandemic. I will describe later more on it, because I have developed the tool later after conducting the interview. So what are my findings from the questionnaire? So the first, one of the interesting findings was to identify the sort of activities they have done during this pandemic. In one of the questions, I asked my student what is new in their life during this pandemic. So that was actually a very casual way to say that. I didn't directly ask them what was new in their life in the questionnaire. I basically gave them some points. So if somebody started a new online course, personally not the university one, the MOOC courses where they can go on their own pace. So if anybody started that, only 24 students said they have started a new online course or finished the new online course. 50%, almost 60% student talked about how they formed a new hobby or habit due to this pandemic. And of course, this 50% student talked about helping family and friends during this situation, and only I would say 16% people talked about doing some sort of volunteer activity or participating in some sort of social activity, which I won't say very common for the student of the at the undergraduate level, because in normal time, if there was a flood or some sort of natural disaster in Bangladesh, students are always at the forefront of it, and they're always trying to help people around them. So the findings from questionnaire, I divided them into three sections. First of all, the access to mental health. So what sort of access they had to mental health. Again, another thing was their attitude towards online class, or how they feel about online classes, different situation, and their outlook towards life. Of course, you have to notice the fact that the mental health case, 81% student did not ever actually access any mental care, healthcare professional or professional help. So this is not because none of them had ever have ever any issue. It's not like that. Basically, it's about the fact that they didn't need to go to any mental health care professional. That's their belief. Again, 60% people believe that they don't have access to mental health care professional. And I'm saying using the word belief because in some of the institutions in Bangladesh right now, there are access to mental health care facility where you can talk to a counselor, you can talk to somebody, but sometimes students are not aware about it. They're mostly dependent on their family when it comes to mental health care. So there is this certain risk when you can't talk to your family about certain issue, or if you're facing a problem with your family, where do you go? Who do you turn to? In case of online classes, there was this pressure of assessment. Now they have ample time in their hand, and they spend that time by doing the presentation or the assignment, or participating in the exam. While this works as some sort of distraction for them, certainly it creates a bit of pressure for them as well, because the work never ends. They are actually working at the end of the night as well. There is this certain lack of communication with the classmates in online classes. They can't see each other in most of the cases. They can't talk to each other in most of the cases, and even if they're talking, they're mainly chatting. So there is no, I wouldn't say there is a very close relationship with the classmates, which would have happened if they were in a physical classroom. 32% students only always appreciate some sort of group work, which is a bit sad under the current circumstances, because right now, when they could have actually facilitate, they could have had a lot of advantage from group work or group study. Right now, they are not very interested in doing that. Some of them are doing it, but only it's like 32% people. It's even less than 50% people if they say that they like group work. So it's actually a matter of worry, a matter of concern. In case of outlook towards life, I would say that the positivity is less right now. So we only have corona positive, but positive ideas or positive thinking, it just decreased. So the number of positive thinking decreased. Less than 20% people are talking about a positive post-corona world, that after corona, when this lockdown is over, quarantine is over, good things will happen to them. They don't actually believe that. Most of them actually don't believe that, which is a warning sign for us, because if the younger people, they don't believe in this sort of issue, or they don't believe in a positive post-corona world, then how are they supposed to feel motivated about their present? Of course, they're forming different sort of habit and different sort of survival technique due to the quarantine. But how far can it take them? I asked this question in the semi-structure interview along with some other questions. Now, one of the interesting point in the semi-structure interview was how it was gender neutral. Most of the students, regardless of male or female, talked about similar sort of problem. It was not about that one gender, they have to stay at home more than the other gender. It was mostly not like that. And the issues that came up was the complication in family relation. Now, the family that you love so much, and in the questionnaire, you said that you will go to the family if you face any sort of mental problem, only they can help you. Now, this, if you have to stay with this family for 24/7, of course there are certain issues. Some of the students talked about how they were having frequent misunderstanding and frequent clashes, where they couldn't agree with each other about anything at all. Now you have to understand what sort of pressure it puts on them. They cannot go out or just get somewhere and cool off. They don't have the opportunity. There is uncertainty about the relevance of future career in most of the students who were planning to do some job which involves being present there physically, were really uncertain about and sad about their future career. Some students talked about their plan of going abroad, which they don't know when they will be able to go now. Some students talked about how they wanted to work maybe as a air hostess or maybe in a bank. So in these cases, how they're supposed to work in these places if if corona exists for a long time. Students also talked about when it came, I asked them about their personal growth, one of the points from the from Reef's dimension. So they talked about how they have more patience now, they're dealing with their family 24/7, they're dealing with a new situation, so they have more patience. They are also more inquisitive now because as online class doesn't come with a lot of support, unfortunately, we can only help our students through the screen. So the help just got stuck in screen. So out of the screen, when they are finding some topic, they're studying about some topic, they have to have some sort of autonomy where they get to choose the ideas they want to learn about, and they have to find out the points from online, and they have to study all by themselves at home without even their classmates in most cases. So of course they can plan more about it. The alternative assessment part, that actually was working as two, it has two sides here. One is fear, another one is comfort. Once some of the students talked about the fear that comes with alternative assessment, they talked about how instead of one exam they're going to have to attend one presentation, one assignment, one project, and that makes them think that this alternative assessment is too much for them. At the same time, now that they're staying at home and they're not being able to do a lot of things, now this alternative assessment also works as a comfort because it takes them a certain amount of time, a certain amount of research, especially for undergrad students, they will go through a lot of research. So for them, it also works as a bit of comfort as well. In case of online classes, voicing opinion freely came as a controversial issue where most of the students talked about how they cannot voice their opinion freely in online classes since they don't know how their classmates will react. Only 2-3 students talked about how they were okay with voicing their opinion regardless of it's an online platform or it's face-to-face class. They had more control over their task. So they were, when they are given any task in Google Form or they're given any task in Google Doc or any other platform, they have more control over it. They can set some time, they can have some time, they can have some sort of preparation where they want to give that exam, where they want to participate, from where they want to answer. So all of these options were there. So they had more control over the task. So the concern about life and death, now let's face it, we cannot avoid the fact that people are dying. They're actually dying, and we can see these things because of social media a lot. So this concern about life and death for adult students, they are not out of the reality, they are very much inside the reality, just like you and me. So when they are talking about their concern for life, they're very much serious about it. So this concern came up again and again in the interview, where they talked about the online classes, the pandemic and everything, how it's putting too much pressure on them. At the same time, they have to think about their education. At the same time, they have to think about the life and death situation. After all these findings, I started preparing my tool. The questionnaire I prepared in the beginning of my study, I started to revise it. Now, while I was revising it, I focused on a couple of variables. So first of all, I focused on the profile. So if you are planning to create a tool, if you're thinking right now, we are watching my video and you are thinking, okay, so maybe I could identify a tool, I would definitely request you or definitely suggest you to start with some sort of small questionnaire, a bit of a survey, may I say. So you could go for a survey and you could find out about more about your students. First of all, let's analyze their context. So where are they right now? In which part of the world they are right now? And what sort of access they have? So do they have good access to mental healthcare professional? We are not focusing on their grades right now. We are focusing on their mental health. So of course we need to know what sort of mental health care facilities they have, or who can actually help them. The socio-economic situation, this was one of the points that came up in the interview, but I couldn't put it in the questionnaire. So I thought about putting it in the questionnaire for the next time, where I focus on students' socio-economic situation. So the money they spent in tuition, of course, that is also a matter of worry for them. Some of their parents, they're not doing any job. Some of the students who work all by themselves and pay for the university by themselves, for them is also a very pressurizing situation. Of course, their age group, because based on the age group, we can identify how involved they are. History of mental health. Now, students who are already suffering from some sort of issues. Now, if we put the whole entire pandemic on them, and we also put an entire online class, new environment on them, how would they react? Now, that is another issue. The current situation, now we have to realize one fact, that right now our students are both inside and outside of the classroom. We cannot say that when they're inside the classroom, they're completely inside the classroom, they're completely focused inside the classroom. It's not like that. The people around them, their family members, they're around them, the distraction of the place where they live, that's around them, the reality of the situation. Someone who is suffering from COVID or any other disease, that person is maybe sitting beside our student. So this sort of reality, we cannot avoid this sort of reality. And when we are focusing on making a profile for our student, or focusing on analyzing their profile, we need to put down these points and ask them about it. What about the variables for preparing the questionnaire, the second section? So if we focus on Reeves dimension, like I said, I connected Reeves dimension with online classes at the same time, the pandemic. So when I focused on self-acceptance, I focused on self-acceptance as a student and as a human being during the pandemic. So I asked student questions about how, what sort of adjustment they're going through, and what do they think about themselves during the pandemic, how are they handling themselves, what do they feel about themselves. So again, I also asked some questions about their autonomy as a learner and as a human being. So how are they voicing their opinion, how are they talking to their classmates, are they being able to present their opinion freely, of course, about their performance, the things that they're doing. Now, one of the things that really scares me is that the more inquisitive our students get, the more they turn into an internet dependent generation. Now, being an internet dependent generation is not something out of the 20s, because right now in the current circumstances, our screen time, our type of work we are doing, right now I'm doing a presentation virtually. So the information that I got, I had to get it from online. I had to spend a lot of time online. What if my students are doing the same thing? Aren't they getting too much dependent on internet? Can we be scared for them in future if we ask them about a simple word meaning or something like that? Will they turn to internet and try to type the word and just find the meaning? Aren't they going to even think about the contextual meaning? What about the purpose of life? Currently, if they cannot think about a future career where they have to go for physical work, then what sort of purpose they have? How can you expect your students to behave happily and normally in the class if they cannot even imagine the future, the planned future, their academic goal? What about the personal growth? Can they identify some areas? My students identify areas, my participants, they identify areas like inquisitiveness, patience, acceptance. To some extent, they also went through self-acceptance. So what sort of personal growth we can identify here? So here are my references. If you focus on the references, you will see how I try to cover all the areas starting from theories to the study. If we can identify these variables, and if we can identify these areas where our student can get help, maybe we can expect our students to be happy, and we can expect a better psychological well-being for them. We can plan for better psychological well-being of our student. And at the end of the day, when we finish a class, when we finish a semester, when they will show this sign to us, maybe we will deserve this truly, not just as a teacher, but as someone who truly understands the students. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation.